All right, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, from wherever you're joining us from, and welcome to the Talking Biodiversity webinar series, which is initiated by the Zimbabwe Youth Biodiversity Network. My name is Prisca Daka, and I'm a coordinator at the Zimbabwe Youth Biodiversity Network. And today we're going to be talking about the Sustainable Development Goals and biodiversity, and because of the length of this session, we're not going to go into details about the SDGs. And the SDGs about how the world will become a better world in the next 10 years. And every single SDG is also linked to biodiversity, whether it is health, food, or economy. Everything relates to living things. And biodiversity, on the other hand, has been defined by the Convention on Biological Diversity as the variability among living organisms from all sources, including diversity within species, between species, and of ecosystems. In simple terms, I'll just define biodiversity as life. Biodiversity is the web of life. Parties to the convention adopted the 2050 vision of living in harmony with nature, and the road to 2050 has several important milestones, which include the design of the post-2020 global biodiversity framework, along with the SDG implementation, which has the 2030 as a deadline. And so that's why it is important for us to actually discuss these two issues together, because they are all interlinked. Just recently, on the 13th of January, the Zero draft on post-2020 global biodiversity framework was released, and it presents five long-term goals for 2050 related to the CBD's 2050 vision, and each of these goals has an associated outcome for 2030. And to help me with this, I'm joined by Raymond Muwaniri, who's going to share with us some of his experiences. Ray is a Zimbabwean currently based in Ireland, where he's working in community development. He's also part of the Sustain Zim, a green online newspaper that covers sustainable development issues in Zimbabwe, and is also a founding member of ZYBN. Welcome, Ray.
Yes, thank you, Prisca.
Again, just for the note for those who joined us, we have a Q&A at the end, so you can ask Ray some questions. Now, Ray, just to begin, you are very involved in environmental issues, biodiversity, and SDGs, of course. Can you just begin by telling us what inspired you to become involved in these issues?
Well, I think it's a combination of a lot of things, you know, because I guess it has to do with my upbringing. Mm-hmm. You know, growing up, I've always been a fan of Dr. Attenborough, David Attenborough, you know, on Nat Geo, you know. So I grew up watching Attenborough quite a lot, and you know, I think as well because I grew up in the city. My parents used to send us to the rural areas where they grew up for school holidays. So I was very familiar with the countryside in Zimbabwe, which just made me fall in love with everything to do with outdoors. You know, whether anything to do with outdoors, I just kind of fell in love with, including wildlife and nature. And you know, just growing up as kids. Just having, you know, like chameleons and just having little creatures around you is just what inspired me. So I've always just been a naturalist by nature, you know, and it just has a lot to do with my upbringing. And also, I guess, because I studied sustainable development, I studied sustainable development in Ireland. You know, that's my undergrad, so that's my primary degree. So I just always have had a passion for it. And I just think, just from what I see from humans themselves, what we're doing to the planet is also one thing that spurs me on, because I just think that we're destroying our homes, and it's just sad to see, people, when I walk daily and I just walking the streets daily, let's say in Zimbabwe or something, and you just see litter all over the place, you just see wetlands just being destroyed, things like that. I just feel that not enough people are paying attention to it, and it will come back to bite us in the future. So this is why this is what inspires me to be involved.
Nice. And last year you were appointed as an SDG advocate, and you also had the opportunity to do the SDG challenge in Vietnam. Can you share with us that experience and what your role as an SDG advocate entails?
Yeah, so last year I applied to become an SDG advocate for Ireland. So basically, it's a program that's run by an organization in Ireland called Development Perspectives. So I applied and was accepted. So it was actually a total of about, I think there was about 10 of us from Ireland that were chosen. And basically, we went to Vietnam for 2 weeks. We had a program 2 weeks in Vietnam. So basically, we also joined up with, I think it was about 16 volunteers also for the program from Vietnam. So it was two groups. So it was an Irish group and it was a Vietnamese group as well. So basically, we were in Vietnam and we had workshops for 2 weeks in two villages. Both of them were in the north of Vietnam. The first village was Sum village, which was it's up in the north in the mountains. So basically, we were there for a week, and we were staying. We were actually being hosted by the village members, which is actually I thought that was a very good idea to even implement in Zimbabwe, whereby locals are in charge of the tourists. So the villages were the ones who were actually looking after us, and basically they have dorms. They have dorms where guests can stay. They feed you, and then basically they have room and space for you to be doing your conferences and workshops. So basically, for the 2 weeks, we had workshops basically that covered SDG goals, and we went through all the different SDG goals, and basically we looked at how Vietnam was implementing the SDGs and also how Ireland was implementing the SDGs. And obviously, me being from Zimbabwe, we also put in there how Zimbabwe was implementing the SDGs. The second village was in Dabia. It's called Dabia village. This one's a fishing village. So the first one was a mountain village. This one was a fishing village. And basically, we did the same thing. We're there for a week again. And basically, we're doing workshops. But then I think that for the villagers to feel that our presence was there, us doing workshops had really nothing to do with the villages. It was just the group itself. So to get the villagers involved, we also did we constructed some paths. We constructed paths in the villages. So that's what we're doing. So we're doing workshops, and then we're also doing kind of physical work, building paths for the village. So in Tabia, we built a village to the river. So it was a very good experience, obviously meeting Vietnamese and obviously getting to see the different villages. And then at the end of it, the Irish side, we have to come up with a project. We have to do an action project. Basically, as an advocate, my role is to come up with a project, obviously to tackle one or more of the SDG goals. So basically, this is an ongoing project. A lot of people have started theirs, and basically, my project would be I want to break down the SDGs to community level. So basically, I just think that the SDGs are just very general, and I think that if we broke it down to a local level, so basically, we would say if we took an area, let's say Manicaland, if we took Manicaland, or let's say Mutare, we would say, Mutare, your target is to do this. Harare, your target is to do this. Mashonaland, your target, and break it down to each level break it down to village level. So basically, that's what I would like to do in Ireland anyway, to break the SDGs down to local level. But basically, that was it. It was a very good experience. We learned a lot in Vietnam, got to meet a lot of people, and got to learn a lot of things. And then after the 2 weeks, I also went traveling Vietnam for another 2 weeks. I traveled from the top of Vietnam to the bottom, from Hanoi, the capital, to Ho Chi Minh. So that was also a good experience.
Yeah, thanks. You have also been putting emphasis on SDG 13 on climate action. It is now widely recognized that climate change and biodiversity are interconnected. Biodiversity is affected by climate change with negative consequences on human well-being. What are some of the innovative solutions do you see people in Vietnam or even in Zimbabwe, where people face climate change reality in their everyday lives?
Okay, well, in Vietnam, in Vietnam, basically what they were saying was that the climate is definitely changing. The summers are getting warmer, the summers are getting hotter and they're getting longer, and the winters are getting shorter and colder. So talking obviously with the villages and obviously with some of the students and just talking with people in Vietnam in general, you could just tell that a lot of things are changing. Like, for example, that rice is very common in Asia, not just Vietnam, in Asia. So there's quite a lot of rice paddies around the country. And talking to villages, the rice paddies are drying up. So this is actually going to affect people's livelihood in Vietnam if there's going to be less water available to grow rice. So right now there's actually a second option of growing rice. You could actually, so some farmers have actually started taking that, where you can grow rice without the water, without them being in rice paddies. So a lot of farmers are kind of getting into that, especially in areas that are mostly affected by the rice paddies losing their water. And there's also quite some initiatives as well. Let's say banana leaves. Like, instead of using plastic bags for your shopping, or using K-lights or all these different packages that you use, in Vietnam, they have started an initiative to use banana leaves, as wrappers for whatever it is that you want to do. So I found that as a very interesting initiative. Even though there were some concern when we did discuss this one, there were some concerns that, obviously, if you have more banana leaves, more bananas being planted, produce this packaging, it means that you're going to lose more habitat for the banana leaves. So there's always an argument, for and against something, but I thought it was a great initiative because at least banana leaves are biodegradable, and it will stop people using single-use plastic all over the place. There's quite especially in Zimbabwe. In Vietnam, not so much, but there was some litter in Vietnam, but not as much as you would see in Africa. There's just plastic everywhere. People just go to the shop and they buy something, and basically they just throw it out afterwards. They just throw it out the window. They don't put it in bins, and so there's just a lot of litter. So things like that is quite a solution. And also bamboo sticks, bamboo straws. Sorry, Vietnam is coming up with an initiative of using bamboo straws. So basically, all the plastic straws because people in Europe, they've already started using paper straws, but paper straws, people don't like them because at the end of your drink, the paper straw starts to break up and things like that. So people don't like paper straws. So bamboo straws is another way. And there's quite a lot of straws. I can't remember the statistics, but it's quite a lot of straws that are used in the world, and basically afterwards they're just thrown away and they just end up in the sea, and obviously it's just causing a lot of problem in the sea and stuff like that. So those are quite a few initiatives. Even the community tourism initiative in the villages that we're staying, I thought that was good because it was promoting tourism in the villages themselves, and basically the villages then could make money from us by hosting us and also taking us around their areas, showing us their heritage, showing us their culture and things like that. So that would stop kind of urban migration, stop people going to urban areas and things like that. And I thought that was a great initiative for some kind of livelihood for the villages. So I thought that was a great initiative. In Zimbabwe, I heard some minister was talking about introducing electric cars, but I think we're quite some time away from that because, for you to have electric cars, you have to have the charging portals and things around the cities and things like that. And I think at the moment we're still quite far away from that. But I mean, if there's any initiatives in Zimbabwe, it's probably through necessity. I find that because there's no electricity, there's electricity issues in Zimbabwe. A lot of people are turning to solar. So in a way, it's working out fine for us, who advocate for renewable resources. But it's out of necessity. It's not out of people wanting to do it. It's out of necessity for electricity. A lot of people are buying solar products and they're just installing solar in their homes and work and everything. And that's one or two of the initiatives that I've seen in Zimbabwe. There's not much happening in Zimbabwe in terms of climate change initiatives. There are a lot of policies and documents that have been produced, and the government do say they're doing this and that, but on the ground actually it's very hard to implement some of the things they're suggesting because people are hungry, people have no jobs. So someone who's hungry and has no jobs, you can't really tell them don't go to the forest, don't go and chop firewood, don't go and do this, because at the end of the day their livelihood is number one before nature. So I just have a feeling that if things don't change soon, we're just going to waste everything away. That's just what I see. So I think that programs like this, organizations like Zimbabwe Youth Biodiversity Network, Sustain Zim and Povo Africa, and organizations that are starting to make themselves heard about climate change, because it's quite evident in Zimbabwe. The rains are coming later. The rain, when we were growing up, when we were younger, the rain used to come in October. Now the first rains come in December. So there's already a 2 months, discrepancy there in the rainfall. So the rainfall patterns are changing. I was just in Zimbabwe. I just came back last week, and it only started raining 2 weeks ago. So, even agriculture, maize that people are depending on, so everyone is actually now starting to raise their heads and start saying, hey guys, what's going on here? Something is going on. And everyone is saying climate change. So everyone is now starting to agree that climate change is quite an issue in Zimbabwe. So hopefully now then more initiatives can be made.
Yeah. And of course, we still need to raise much awareness on biodiversity as well, because in as much as most people know about climate change, but there's also the issue of biodiversity. So I think those are like two important issues that need raising awareness on. And can you also put the rumors to bed on whether or not the Victoria Falls is dried up, since you also visited there?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I went to Vic Falls on a different mission. I didn't go on a tourist mission, so I actually did not go to see the falls. So I cannot say from experience myself, and also I don't know what the previous levels were. But in talking to people, they have said that obviously the water levels are lower than they used to be. Do you get what I mean? Just in general, the water levels, even in Kariba Dam, the water levels are lower than they used to be. But they said they're not as low as people are saying. I just think that sometimes climate change activists, they latch on to things like this just to prove their point that climate change is happening. Yes, climate change is happening, but I think sometimes people just they add more to it just so that it have more content. Because when I was leaving Vic Falls, it was actually raining, so obviously all that water is kind of replaced. But obviously it's not as grand as it used to be. But there is still quite a lot of water in Victoria Falls.
Okay. Thank you for that. So two important reports were actually also released last year. One from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC in short, and the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, IPBS, and they reveal the clear and present danger of biodiversity loss and climate change that it poses on our health, security, and well-being of humanity. And the issue of the climate change in Zimbabwe it's a real issue, and it's happening now. It's not a drill. And last year, Zimbabwe was struck by a cyclone Idai, along with Mozambique and Malawi. It is a natural disaster, but it's not natural because these kind of disasters that are happening more frequently are being encouraged or happening frequently because of human interaction with nature. And some of these effects of, especially with the cyclone, you can still see them even when you go to the area where that was affected. And you also had the opportunity to visit that area as well. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so when I was in Ireland during the cyclone, I managed to start a GoFund for Cyclone Idai, whichever way you want.
Right.
But yeah, I managed to raise some money. I managed to raise 500 US. So basically, we wanted to donate to a school. So we were in touch with a school. It's called Ngangu Primary School, just outside Chimanimani town. And basically, they asked us to buy some exercise books because a lot of parents cannot afford exercise books. So we managed to. So we actually went to actually donate, and you can just see the devastation even before you get to Chimanimani. The road, they're still constructing the roads. Most of the bridges were washed away. So they're actually busy building new bridges right now. The stronger ones that didn't go away were damaged severely. Like, I mean, if I had pictures, I have pictures, but we can share another time. But basically, everything was uprooted. So it was just a lot of rocks, a lot of rock falls from, no one knew where the rocks were coming from, but there was just a lot of rocks everywhere. Houses destroyed. Basically, the water levels were so high, and a lot of, I think, one growth point, if I can remember the name of it, was actually underwater, and nearly everyone in that growth point passed away. So, and the people are definitely affected by the cyclone because when I was there, it was misty, it was raining, and people are just traumatized. They're afraid that something like that could happen again. So I was talking to the headmaster, like about early warning systems and, letting people know, because I know in Europe, you're told well in advance, you're told to move or, to barricade yourself or do something. But so I asked him, in Zimbabwe, what was the 411? And basically he said that, yes, they were told that a cyclone was coming, but he said that they always have some kind of mild cyclones. They've always had a history of cyclones, but people were not prepared for it, and they still don't know to this day. They still don't know how many people died, how many people. But basically, what I heard was that everybody lost somebody, and at the time, everybody went out to help everybody. The community came together because all the roads were blocked. So it took weeks and weeks to unclear the road, all the roads, all the rocks in the road and everything, all the debris and everything. And it is still very much an area that it still needs help and development. And also, I think the people themselves, psychologically, I think that we should not stop on the physical things. I think we need to also work on the mentality of the people affected, because just talking to everyone, they were really, really shook up. People lost their children, people lost their parents, and it was just very hard, And in terms of biodiversity as well, I think that was also affected because a lot of trees were uprooted. And but animals have a way of knowing natural disasters before they actually happen, in that kind of way. But it is definitely something that is that needs to be paid more attention of. I know that it's no longer on the news, and people think that everything has been solved, but I think that people still need to go to Chimanimani, and if you could visit as well, if you could raise some money as well for the people that are there, I think that would be great.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of animals, like you mentioned, that they may know that there is a disaster that is coming, but they still remain at the mercy of of humans to save them. And for example, like especially when it comes to these climate effects, last year with the drought in Zimbabwe, where almost about 200 elephants died. And this also indicates that other wild animals as well were also affected, although they may not have been documented. But this is all part of biodiversity. And if we do not act now, and if we don't do anything now, we start see a lot of these species going extinct, and it's all because of how we interact with nature, because we're putting more and more pressure on nature, and we're actually not giving it time to to heal. And so that's why we are now experiencing all these droughts, all these cyclones that are happening.
Yeah, no, you're very right there. Like, I just feel that in terms of biodiversity, in terms like the national, I'll give an example. The national parks themselves, right? Long ago, before we had borders, animals used to travel. So if this place is dry, they would travel to another area to find food. But because of human expansion and because of fixed borders of national parks, the animals cannot really escape to anywhere. That's why, we have so many elephants. There's arguments about elephants, about there's too many elephants in Zimbabwe, so we need to do something about them. And because they're causing a lot of devastation in the area, that's because they have nowhere else to go. They just keep roaming around the same kind of area. So of course it's going to happen. So I think that we need, because I know in India they did that. They increased the land for their national parks, give them more space. I think we need to give the animals more space. And it's not even about the animals that are in the national parks. I think that even amongst us, amongst where we are living, we live with animals, whether it's chameleons, frogs. And I just feel that, a lot of that, especially wetlands. I did a video when I was in Zimbabwe of it's a wetland in Glaudina, just outside when you're on Bulawayo Road, and it's a beautiful place, but because people are putting maize on it, the wetland is no more, but the water is still there. There's still some little creatures living there, but so I just think in Zimbabwe there's very few people that actually take to mind about the creatures that we live alongside in our cities. So I think more work needs to be done, especially when it comes to saving our wetlands and just about loss of habitat, because in rural areas it's up to the village head to give land. So if I was living in Honde Valley and I needed land for me or for my children, I simply go to the village head, and because of corruption, I can simply pay the village head. And basically the village heads are giving people land where they're not supposed to be given land. It's the same thing in Chimanimani. People were living in what you call water zones. People were placed in water zones, areas that they should have never been. If they had never been settled there in the first place, half the people that passed away in that would have been saved, because not being followed. People don't follow them because people are looking for quick money. People are not following the regulations. You're not supposed to plant 30 meters, with river. People in Zimbabwe, we believe in fertilizer, so fertilizers for bumper harvest. So people will just put excess fertilizers, and those fertilizers are just they're just going into the water. They're killing the rivers. They're killing the water systems. That's why water hyacinth is quite prominent in some of our rivers. If you check Lake Chivero, there's a lot of water hyacinth, and basically it's just a result of too much fertilizer, too much nitrogen in the water. So I think we need to look for more sustainable ways, sustainable agricultural ways, sustainable ways of doing things.
Yeah. I think at the rate of urbanization that we are actually seeing, it's actually quite important for us to actually include nature in that as well. Like when we are developing Rainforest, to be mindful about this this wetlands that you're talking about, and there's also urban biodiversity as well. It doesn't always have to be in the rural areas or in a protected area. Like nature is basically everywhere. So even if it's like in an urban city, we also need to make sure that we protect that nature that is found within the urban cities. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yes.
And so in this whole issue of SDGs and biodiversity, what is the role of young people in all of this? Because we are a network that advocates for youth participation. What role do young people play in achieving the SDGs by 2030? Because we have 10 years from now. And 10 years seems like a long time, but it'll be here soon. So what can young people do now, as well as be involved in protecting our biodiversity?
Yeah, I think basically, the youth, because the future is theirs, the future is theirs. I think the youth just have to take it for themselves. Like if you take one person as an example, whether you look in relation to the just around whether it's
You're breaking up, Ray.
everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So I was just saying. Hello?
Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah, it just keeps breaking up. All right, yeah. So I was just saying, I think that the youth should pick one or two SDGs or more that relate to you and where you live, and just work on that. I think that it's just a matter of looking where you are. Like right now in Zimbabwe, there's a waste management problem. So as a youth, you need to find something up with projects, link up with organizations, link up with community groups, start community groups. And there's just a lot of things that you can do yourself as a person, and don't wait to be paid to do some of this work. I wrote an article, I think it was 2015. I will share it on the platform on our Facebook page, Zimbabwe Youth Biodiversity Network page. Basically, it's 25 ways, 25 points in which a Zimbabwean can reduce their carbon footprint. So basically, each person, what we need to do is that each person needs to look at themselves and see, what is your carbon footprint? When we talk about carbon footprint, we are saying, what is your ecological, what is your footprint? How much carbon dioxide are you producing as an individual? So things like driving cars and cutting down trees, and just as an individual, there are things that you are doing that are contributing to climate change. So I wrote down 25 ways in which each young Zimbabwean can improve can reduce their carbon footprint, because We're talking about reducing carbon dioxide as a nation. So, which means that each person has a responsibility to reduce their carbon footprint. So, I'll give you some examples. Basically, things like taking public transport. Because like if everyone drives a car, that's more emissions in the atmosphere. And you don't have to drive a car all the time. I'm not saying people don't drive cars. People drive cars. But it doesn't mean drive a car all the time. In Zimbabwe, you find people who drive a car just to go to the shops, but you can just simply walk to the shops. So things like taking public transport, carpooling. Carpooling is sharing. So maybe one day, Prisca, you drive and I'll pick you up. We go to work. The next day, vice versa, and things like that. Walking close distance, obviously using hybrid cars, but obviously in Zimbabwe that's not practical at the moment until the government put in charging portals. But that's an example for the future. Taking a shower instead of a bath. I know this happens in Zimbabwe. People take bucket baths, but that's just because of the water shortage. So in a way, this works out for us because of necessity again. But things like taking a shower, because you use less water, you use less energy using a shower. Use cold water instead of hot water because you're using less energy. Use light bulbs that are CFL light bulbs instead of the old light bulbs. Always unplug your gadgets. Don't leave your phone charging all night. One, it destroys your phone. Two, you're just wasting energy. Once your phone is charged, I don't know why people leave their phones charged all night. It's only going to be charged in an hour, but it's not all night. You're just wasting energy. Use a laptop over a desktop. Don't buy bottled water. Use local produce. Basically, what they mean by local produce, obviously, there's less mileage in bringing local produce. There's no point to you buying produce from Brazil, because there's a lot of mileage associated with that. There's a lot of carbon used. There's a carbon produced from bringing that food here. So using local produce, and there's plenty of other things here. I will share this link. Don't use black bins. Obviously, they absorb heat, and plant a tree. Use both sides of a newspaper. Use renewable energy. But basically, what we're saying is that we need to reduce, reuse, and recycle. Just those 3 R's. We need to have those 3 R's. So I think that I did a survey in 2015 with an organization which I'm also part of, which is called Povo Africa. And basically, Povo Africa does art, culture, and sustainable development issues. So basically, we do Sustain Zim, which is a green online newspaper. You can look it up online, sustainzim.org. And basically, we did a survey in 2015. I went around 8 colleges and universities around Zimbabwe to find out what tertiary students know about climate change. And basically, we found that 85% of all the students that we interviewed knew about climate change. And basically, 85% of the students have experienced climate change. So people can actually see that the climate is changing. And basically, 89% were taught about climate change in school. So we are kind of going the right way in teaching our kids. But after they leave school, are they practicing what they learned? I just feel that maybe in Zimbabwe, if you are in environment, then maybe you care about the environment. If you're studying biology, then you care more about. If you go off to do business, if you go off to do accounting, if you go off to be a doctor, I just feel that people just disconnect with what they are taught. But what we're saying is that each Zimbabwean has a responsibility, whether you're a youth, whether you're a senior. I think that each youth, each person in Zimbabwe, Vietnam, or anywhere has a responsibility to reduce their carbon footprint, because the climate is getting warmer, guys. Definitely. I'm in Ireland right now. We're in the middle of winter, and I was just telling Prisca earlier that I haven't felt cold since I've been back in Zimbabwe. It's so mild outside, and we're in the middle of winter, and I'm like, the climate is getting warmer, guys. So definitely, the youth have a lot to do. It's not enough to just learn it in school. It's enough to take it afterwards. So we need to start some kind of forums, some kind of community groups, to get people to engage. And we just need to go door to door and talk to people, encourage people But at the moment, because of politics, because of economics, people will just tell you my livelihood is more important. So, the moment it's going to be a very hard sell, saving our biodiversity, because like animals are becoming extinct. We think of like baboons. They evolve. Like if we look at Zimbabwe, there's region 1 to region 5. Baboons from region 1 are different from baboons in region 5. It eats different things, even though it's a baboon. So if all the baboons in region 1 disappear, we cannot take baboons from region 5 and put them in region 1, thinking we can just repopulate, because it doesn't work that way, because they evolved in that area. So basically, we're saying that some species are becoming locally extinct. Like anyone, I don't know about you, Prisca, but if you ever went to rural areas growing up, I'm sure you heard about Kuvima, and people just used to go hunting for hares and dike and and all these kind of antelopes. But now these are non-existent now. So basically, if there is something that is unique to that area, it's gone. So basically, we call it local extinction. So it's only the European countries that count how many species are dying, how many subspecies are dying. In Zimbabwe and Africa, I don't see any of that. There's no one doing research to see what species, what is a subspecies, what's a species, which species still exists, and so on and so on. So I think that this is something for universities to take up. Children. I don't know what universities are teaching, but this is what they should be teaching. They should be doing research into specific species, subspecies, and so forth, and getting people out there and actually doing research on the ground to see what is left and what is not.
Yeah, and and also just speaking about the rivers that you used to swim in when you were still young. I'm sure those as well are no longer there when you go back to your rural areas. We just have these stories that we have that we used to have this kind of animals, or the river used to be this big. I think we should also ask ourselves that why are we letting this happen? Why should we let this happen? To nature. And
Yeah.
even speaking on all those like small actions that you mentioned, there's about 7 billion of us here on the planet. So if each and every one of us actually does that, we can do a lot to help, nature, biodiversity to recover. And despite all these, existing challenges when it comes to protecting biodiversity, be it in Zimbabwe or worldwide, what makes you hopeful about the future?
Well, obviously, discussions like this, Prisca, they go quite a long way. Obviously, when we share this and people listen to this, initiatives like starting an organization like Zimbabwe Youth Biodiversity Network, initiatives like Sustain Zim, this is from my side. That's why I just feel that something has to happen, because sometimes we are forced to do things, and the way it's going right now, we're going to be forced to take action. That's what is bringing me hope, is that we're going to be forced to take action because things are changing around us that are affecting us negatively. Like, how rain is very important in Zimbabwe in terms of for the people and for the wildlife itself. So once that rain is taken out, people will start to panic and people will have to start to do something about it. There is quite a movement worldwide. I think that things are going in the right direction in terms of all the frameworks that are being done. I think that the future is bright. That in Europe, I can say that a lot has been done, because when I look at Ireland, like I live in Port Arlington here. There's a river just down the road. We're in the middle of a town, basically, but I could actually go and fish in that river because they have fish there. So Ireland has cleaned up its environment in the last 10 years. They've cleaned up the environment in the last 10 to 20 years, that their rivers are actually quite clean. They have a very good waste management system. And when I talk about, because Ireland is in Europe, it's part of the European Union. I take it that the rest of Europe is like that. You know, if you take Finland, if you take Germany, if you take the Scandinavian countries are doing well. Germany, they're doing very well in terms of sustainable development and protecting biodiversity. So, and you know, the thing about it is that Europe killed off their wildlife. You know, they used to have wolves and bears and lions, you know, at some stage here in Europe, but they killed off, I don't know how many hundreds of years ago, they killed off all their wildlife. But Africa still has its wildlife. That's what we don't realize as Africans, is that Europeans come, they pay money to come and see our wildlife, yet they destroyed theirs, and now they're trying to reverse it. In Ireland, they were talking about reintroducing wolves in Ireland. That wolves used to be here because there's so many deer running around, there's so many rabbits. They've no predators in Ireland. They've no big predators. So they've started talking about reintroducing wolves. I don't know about bears, but I'm sure it will get there because bears used to be a part of their environment as well. So, you know, they're now realizing that, oh, you know what? So now they're taking wolves from, you know, they're repopulating from Canada, from all these kind of different places. But I'm just saying to Africans, Zimbabweans, we don't have to do that because we have that wildlife already.
Yeah.
So I just think that we are going in the right direction. I think we just need to change that narrative, because I think that in Africa, people are relaxed. They are told that climate change is not your fault. Climate change is the fault of Western countries.
Yeah.
So you guys can take it easy because a very low percentage is of the climate change, of the pollution and things like that, is coming from Africa. So it's kind of like Africa has taken a back seat, as in like they say, no, it's not our responsibility, it's the West's responsibility. But yet, it is affecting us big time, especially Southern Africa. You know, it's a really savanna. It's a really savanna areas, but it's actually becoming semi-arid at the moment. Our rivers are full of sand. There's a lot of siltation from all the land degradation. So when it rains, it's washing away all the soil because all the trees are no more. The roots that hold the soil, you know, the simple environmental science that we learned in school, where a tree holds the soil together. But we are cutting down those trees for firewood, for electricity, because there's no electricity in Zimbabwe. We're cutting. So when it rains, all that soil is being washed away into the rivers, and the rivers are just becoming so much soil in the rivers, and you know, so much fertilizers in our rivers. It's just a mess at the moment. Like I said, I'll give you an example. My mom comes from Hondi Valley, and we used to go there quite a lot. And we used to have a river just down the road that we used to go and play in. And there used to be lots of fish. We used to catch fish. We used to catch frogs. We used to do a lot of things. But now, if I tell you now, it's basically like a little line. It used to be a river. Now it's just a line, because basically all the water is being diverted for banana plantations. And Hondi Valley now is now #1 in Zimbabwe for producing bananas, and basically has come at the cost of biodiversity in Zimbabwe, because Hondi Valley is a region area, it's a real rainforest kind of things, but basically all that is actually becoming no more, because all the trees have been cut down for banana plantation. So it's affecting the whole microclimate, as in like the trees that are supposed to do what's the process? Transpiration of water vapor going into the air from the trees. The trees are there no more. So that water vapor is less and less and less. So therefore, the whole microclimate of Hondi Valley, there's less rain. I was just there, and the first rains came after Christmas. The first rains, and this is region 1. This is the region where we say most of the rainfall in Zimbabwe, the highest amount of rainfall in Zimbabwe falls. But now it's not as it used to be. So if a region 1 can be affected like that, imagine a region 5. Imagine Matabeleland. Right now in Matabeleland, the UN has called for, they've donated money to feed people in region 5, because the crops are failing, there's no rain, there's no nothing. So, you know, in these hardships, initiatives need to come out. People need to come out, like I said, in your area, look at your area, say, what can I do in my area, whether it's waste management, whether it's looking at the biodiversity, whether it's wetlands around in your area. As a youth, look at your area and see, what can I do? Who can I link with us? Zimbabwe Youth Biodiversity Network, we can help you. Link with Move Africa, Sustain Zim, link with other organizations that are there to help you identify. We need to identify initiatives, and we need to get funding, and we need to push those initiatives.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely agree with you. I think people's lives, depend on on biodiversity in ways that we may not always appreciate, or ways that are apparent. But the bottom line is we all depend on biodiversity. And as I mentioned in the beginning, especially when it comes to SDGs, all of them are actually linked to biodiversity. So working to achieve these SDG goals by 2030 will also help us in protecting biodiversity. Our own health is depends on ecosystem services, like all the medication that we need. It comes from biodiversity. Even if you're not sick, just having clean air, a good environment, seeing all this nature is just good, for human well-being. And of course, we get fresh water, food sources, fuel, and all these things are prerequisites for human health and livelihoods. Let me just.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say that it's actually quite important especially for young people to be at the forefront. Like as you mentioned, like look for organizations that are already working on these issues and join them. And many of them are actually looking for young people. Like ZYBN Biodiversity is always open for young people to join in with Sustain Zim. If you want to write articles, want to write about what's happening to raise awareness, you can always contact them. So there are so many ways that a person can get involved. And it's not about forcing each other, but all of us have to work together. Like all hands have to be on deck, and especially with 2020 and COP15 coming up in October in China. We're actually saying it's not just supposed to be a year about conferences where parties, governments, they go and meet and make promises, and then we go back home, nothing is done, and we still continue to see this destruction of our environment, of biodiversity, and with climate crisis that that will be like increasing on a daily basis. So it's actually time to act. This is a decade of action, and we need to start seeing actions, whether it is from the high level, or it is to a single person. All of us need to participate and do something to protect this biodiversity that we all depend on to survive.
Yeah, yeah. Like I can give you I can give you an example. When I was in Vietnam, Vietnam was actually quite hot. I found it very hot. It was very humid, and it was also very hot. So I struggled to breathe, especially in the cities. So in Ho Chi Minh, basically everyone walks around. They cover, they have masks that cover their mouths. Like what we see in China and on TV. And I found that strange. Not the fact that they wear, but the fact that if you are outdoors, it's not like you are indoors and there's smoke that's been put inside, and we're basically outside and people are suffocating outside. There's just smoke, pollution everywhere, to the point where I found it hard to breathe in a city outside. So that's how much we are polluting. And in Vietnam, because over there they use motorbikes, so nearly everyone has a motorbike. There's like 94 million people in Vietnam. I think there's about 40 something million, if I remember correctly, over 40 million motorbikes. So that is a lot of carbon monoxide entering the atmosphere. So I think that's one thing that in Vietnam they need to look at. They need to look at their transport system and create more energy efficient and more carbon less emitting initiatives in Vietnam. That's one criticism I had, is that there's just too many motorbikes, and it's just causing a lot of pollution, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, young people. I think young people need to get involved in politics. I know that people in Zimbabwe don't really want to get involved in politics, but I think that by getting involved in politics, because all these conferences that our politicians go to, I feel that because our politicians are of an older generation, they were not specifically, you know, they grew up through the Rhodesian area, that really didn't focus on environmental management and all the things that we were taught. So when they go there, I don't think their priority is so much when they come back. I don't think their priority is to implement anything that comes from over there. That's why I think that a lot of them go over there and it's just basically a trip for them to go there. I just feel that not enough is being done when they come back from all these different conferences. So I think that young people need to be involved in politics at a local level. And once you get involved in politics, you are in a place of making decisions, you know, for your community. You know, whether you become a councillor, whether you become a subhuku, or whether you become an MP, you know, I think that young people need to put themselves in in decision making roles. Like the president of Finland is like 33, I think 31 years old, you know, and Finland is like a good example for in terms of protecting biodiversity. And you know, they're talking about 4 days a week work and things like, they talk about a lot of things. So I think that we need a transformation in politics. I know there's not a political platform, but I'm just encouraging young people to get involved in politics. Put yourself in a position of making those decisions, because if you are not, you know, like, because I'm a keen environmentalist,
Yeah.
I kind of looked at it this way, and I'm like, if you are working for Emma, or if you're working for an environmental organization, you need to apply to the government for this, for that, for this, for permit for this, permit for that, and so on. And it's just a lot of red tape. And I think that if you bypass all of that by by being in the leadership yourself, I think that it will actually save a lot. So I myself am involved in politics, or intend to be involved in politics, and I myself want to bring change, because I think that if you are dealing with environment and politics, two different things, I think that you're not getting anywhere. Because if you do something that the politicians don't like, then you won't get what you want. You won't achieve what you want to achieve. But I think that in merging the two, environment and politics, I think that we'd go quite a long way. You know, the Green Party here in Europe, not so much Ireland, but in Europe, I think the Green Party is doing quite well. You know, so they're the ones coming in with all these policies, you know, to help with tackling climate change, and to help with protecting biodiversity.
Yeah. Thank you so much for for all those insights, sharing with us your work as an SDG advocate, and also just advocating for the protection of biodiversity, and also involvement of young people. Is there any last message that you would want to say to young people, some of the people actually tuned in right now, and or those that will watch later?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure if they go through the whole clip, there'll be a lot of messages. Like I said, please get involved in community work that has to do with biodiversity and tackling climate change. You know, starting community forums, you know, starting organizations, you know, just showing some kind of initiative. I just think that everything is not about money. Sometimes the money can come later, but at the moment, I think that the earth comes first, the environment comes first. So I think getting more involved, like I said, getting involved in politics and things like that. But basically, like I said, reducing your own carbon footprint. You yourself as an individual, what are you doing? Are you driving a 3-liter car that is producing so much CO2? you know, every day you're driving when you can just get a bus, when you can just get a train, you know, things like that. So, like I said, please read my article, 25 Ways for Zimbabweans to Reduce Their Carbon Footprint. And it'll give you an idea of what you as an individual can do to reduce your carbon footprint. And this obviously will help tackle climate change and also help with the environment and in general biodiversity. So just remember the 3 R's, which is reduce, reuse, and recycle. Those are the three. Those 3 R's are very important. You know, I just feel in Zimbabwe there's not such recycling opportunities. Here in Ireland, we have a 3-bin system. You know, all this waste I can put in a general waste, compost bin waste, and recycling waste. And when they're collected just like that from source. This needs to be introduced in Zimbabwe because in Zimbabwe we're mixing up all our waste. So right now there's a lot of issues in terms of, especially what you call it, these disposable nappies. You know, they take 500 years to to decompose, and there are people, because then the bins are not being collected, they're just being dumped everywhere. So I think that just remember those 3 R's, and obviously get in touch with Zimbabwe Youth Biodiversity Network. Get in touch with Sustain Zim. We're actually looking for articles for 2020, and this year we're looking at investigative journalism. So we're looking for young people who like to write, who like to investigate. We want to investigate what is actually happening in Zimbabwe. What are the companies doing that are polluting? What is the government doing to tackle? What is EMA doing? We actually want to look at things on the ground. So we're looking for young people that can help us. It doesn't have to be as journalists, but just anybody who's inquisitive and likes to write. So we're looking for articles. So get in touch with us, sustainzim.org. So just get in touch with all these organizations, and like-minded people think the same. Find other people that think like you, work like you, and therefore convince the next person beside you. That's what I try to do every time, Prisca. Anyone I talk to, I try to convince them. You know, whether it's a conversation about climate change, biodiversity, environmental management, whether it's anything, politics, I try to convince the next person. So at least you affect everyone around you. So anyone in my network knows that Ray is passionate about the environment, Ray is passionate about biodiversity, you know, and some of them have actually gone on to do stuff because of my influence. So I think that if you are passionate about environment, if you're passionate about biodiversity, affect the next person next to you, affect that accountant, affect your friend who's studying to be medicine. Tell them that the environment is important, because without the environment, they themselves will not be there.
I actually do agree with you, especially on just having that conversation built with your friends, I mean your parents, even a stranger that you just meet, just start chatting them up on on issues of the environment, and like we have even the ZYBN biodiversity challenge that we have ongoing, where we just asking people just to post something or a video or a photo of you just talking to somebody about biodiversity, because we need to do a lot of change in people's mindsets in terms of how we interact with nature, with all this biodiversity that is around us. Even like you mentioned, like you said, the issue of waste management, don't just mix your your waste together. Have different bins where you put your compost, other garbage, and other stuff for recycling in a different compartment. So I guess that's quite important, and we still have a long way to go, but it is possible. We all just have to be involved. And at this point, I think we can open up for questions, the Q&A. So if you have anybody who wants to ask Ray a question before we sign off, this will be the opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess not. I guess you've really touched people and they're really just taking in
Hopefully,
what.
I've covered everything, and there's no questions, and everyone has understood everything.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, it's a start. We can't do everything, just by ourselves. Just by starting this one conversation, then the next person hears it, then the next person, create that ripple effect. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's
Um,
very true.
yeah, thank you very much. For like I already say thank you, but yeah, again, thank you, for sharing with us. And I think I just want to say, to all the young people, do not wait for tomorrow. I know people love to say that, we are the leaders of tomorrow, but we are not. We are actually leaders of today, and we actually have the capacity to act now. And tomorrow is not an option. For our generation, it's not an option even for biodiversity itself, because biodiversity crisis, climate crisis is happening now. It's not a drill. So we need to start acting now. And somebody actually once said that change happens when ordinary people uh, you know, do extraordinary things. So I believe in the leadership of young people, and we just hope that our leaders will actually see this youth agency that we have in terms of just making sure that we protect biodiversity, nature, and also people at the same time, because also our human rights that actually have to be protected as well. And yeah, you're also welcome to join or get involved with the Global Youth Biodiversity Network. It has chapters in different countries, and it's actually a good platform to just get involved with other young people like myself, like Ray, advocating for to halt the loss of biodiversity, and many other organizations that you can join, and help us to fight uh, and to protect biodiversity. I think this ends our talk, and thank you
Yeah, but
for.
I just wanted to thank you as well, Prisca. I
Yeah,
think that you're a great leader, and I think that your passion is second to none. And the things that you do, setting up this, helping to initiate the start of Zimbabwe Youth Biodiversity Network, and even the way you got in touch with me, and even just the rest of the team. I think that you're an inspiration to young people there, and I think that wildlife, especially in Zimbabwe, is dependent on people like you to
yeah,
keep up the work that I know the organization you used to work for before does really, really great work, So I just wanted to give a shout out to you and say that we appreciate everything that you do, and that you should keep what you're doing, and basically together with us. And also want to give a shout out to the rest of the team,
yeah.
Knowledge, Lennon, um,
Actually,
yes, Ashford, yeah. Just give a shout out to everyone, and also want to give a shout out to my team in Sustain Zim, Balaam, Roderick, Chi, and Elton and Rudo, and we should also keep up the good work. And also to my friend Ifinton, up representing. But yeah, no, Prisca, I think like you said, the future is not. It's not about the future; it's about today,
yeah,
and we definitely need to start. We need to start now.
yeah. All right.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
All right, okay, bye.